April Fools. I'd like to first start off by introducing Dan Gendler. He's GRCC Adjunct Culinary Faculty and is the owner of Sanchez Restaurant. Anja Mast, farmer and owner of the Trillium Haven Cooperative. And Jerry Adams, director of the West Michigan Co-op, and also Devin Maloney, who is a member of the nonprofit group Tilling to Table, which I believe started here at GRCC. So please welcome our local food experts.
So we can all be at the table?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. What I'd like each of you to do just for a few minutes is introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your involvement with providing local food.
Well, as Moss said, we started Sanchez, it'll be 18 years ago this fall. And when we were looking into that, we knew we wanted to be community minded. We have it right in our corporate goals and our values. It's in black and white and has been all those years, but we never really had to worry, and as you saw on the film, these things really started to be multiplied as far as issues within the past 20 years. We didn't think about the food end. We thought about the waste end. We opened up by composting. We thought about the sustainability on that part of it. But we didn't have to worry about the food end. So it wasn't hugely out in front. And in fact, even on the sustainability side, we didn't advertise when we opened our doors that we're composting. When we started recycling, 8 years ago, we didn't advertise that we're recycling. We did it because it was the right thing to do. So we've always been buying as much local as we can, but it hasn't been in the forefront. But it is difficult. In Michigan, it's difficult. And there aren't a lot of sources to supply us with enough product to always buy everything local. So there's a trade-off, and our business model, and hopefully most of you know the size of what we have, is not been created to be completely local. And I'm not trying to make excuses. We continue to do more and more, and I think we do a very good job. But the fact of the matter is, to be 365 days a year offering the amount of food that we do, and the style that we do, we have to have the same product over and over again. So I like to think of not only the local part that we have to focus on, but also the slow food aspect. In other words, the Serrano ham coming from Spain, the Marcona almonds, the olive oil. Yeah, it's traveling over 1,500 miles, but to be true to the brand and what we do, it has to. So we augment that with Dancing Goat Farms and Mud Lake Farms, and as much local as we can, but some of those can't produce all year long. Kind of got off the subject a little bit, but we're constantly trying to improve, and I think that's the main thing. And as customers, we're customers, we push our purveyors. When we went to GFS, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, and we said we want green chemicals, and we want local foods, and we want better packaging and no chlorine in our paper, one of the very first things that they gave me as example is, well, we came out with this green product, we packaged it, it takes less packaging, it's lighter, it takes less fuel to put on the truck, we rolled it out to all our customers, we got rid of our old paper towel that was not as good, and they came back and said, now we have to carry 2 products because the consumer is not educated. They saw this smaller box which had the same number of sheets in it and said, you're ripping us off, we want the big box back. So part of the problem, the resistance, is the demand isn't there. And as they said with the Walmart thing, if the community makes the demand and they're educated, then things will go that way. But until every restaurant owner understands that you can get the same amount of sheets of paper towel from something this rolled versus this rolled, and that saves the environment, change isn't happening very quickly. So there's a huge problem that way. Kind of got off subject, but it's all consumer driven. I think that's a big point.
Thanks, Dan.
Just a really quick point in terms of restaurants. My husband and I run Trillium Haven Farm. since 2001, and we are a 450 member CSA, so people buy a share of their harvest, of our harvest, for 22 weeks of the season, from the first week of June until the last week of October. They get 2 to 4 bags of produce from our farm. So it's something that we started. This film is very, very close to my heart, and in terms of what we do and why we do it, because in 1986, when I started at Calvin College, I started reading books and watching films like this, and stopped eating meat, factory meat. And so when my husband and I decided to get married in 1999, just in terms of what we wanted to do, I mean, we both went to Calvin, and I went on for a master's in English, but it was like, what can we do as environmentalists, as people who care, as people who want to raise children, as people who want to have a family business, which, you know, it's sort of a Dutch thing. You know, your family's like, gotta have a family business. And we actually read Joel Salatin's book and went out and visited his farm. That man has had more effect. You could probably ask, you know, 90% of new farmers from the past 10 years have, you know, they know who that person is and what he subscribes to in terms of the integrity of his farm. And yes, people will drive 5 hours to pick up his chickens. So he was an incredible, you know, obviously mentor, even though we never really talked to him. But the concept that we started, the CSA, which is what we run, this 450 member farm, we actually saw that model and visited that model in Massachusetts. And I think that's the thing about, you can watch a lot of movies and you can read about these things, but as a consumer, if you really, really want to change your behavior, you are going to have to get personally involved. It is not good enough to switch from you know, Doritos to organic Doritos. That's really not going to make a gigantic difference in the world or at all in your diet. And I think it makes such a difference. For example, you know, we've pretty much separated ourselves out of the industrial food system. I will not eat meat that I have not personally slaughtered or know that farmer who slaughters it. We don't go through the big industrial food. You know, we actually have a small guy that processes the meat. We have somebody who kills the animal on the farm. It is, you know, everything is just like Joel Salatin. You are completely involved with the process and can guarantee that, you know, for your customer. But it's incredible what happens when people get involved, because it kind of, then it's not so hard to walk away from the grocery store, because it's so much, it tastes so much better, it's so much more fun, you're part of a community, you're part of a group of people that are supporting each other. I mean, it's not something that's really easy to do on your own. Like, I had a really hard time when I was 18 years old at Calvin, you know, becoming a vegetarian with the dorm food and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And people ask me a lot about that. But supporting restaurants, we work with a couple restaurants. And looking at the big picture, it's really interesting to me that in the state of Michigan, agriculture is now #1 industry, which is huge, right? But what kind of industry is it? There are more. I was just reading a doctoral student at MSU who has gotten into some trouble with what he wants to write his dissertation on. He's trying to make the point that there are more professors of agriculture than there are sustainable farmers. And that's just a very basic fact. We are where we are. We have what we have. We have huge farms that produce apples for applesauce companies. We have huge farms that produce corn for corn syrup. That's just, it's a commodity market in the state of Michigan. That's just what it is. But the next step, and even coming out of MSU, is to have farmer training programs where, you know, people will be trained to have more and more small farms. So when that happens, that sort of process, which is going to be sort of the next 10-year push for everybody that's in organics right now and sustainable farming, when that push comes and that there's more available, that'll make it easier for restaurants. And you're educating the consumer at the same time, so that they'll go to the restaurant and say, you know what, I'm actually going to pay 25 cents more for, you know, an organically, sustainably grown salad just from right here in West Michigan. And we're totally not there yet. but we are so far from where we were 10 years ago. You know, so there's an enormous amount of hope, but it really, really takes somebody saying, I'm gonna walk away from corn syrup, I'm gonna walk away from the center aisles of the grocery store, I'm going to connect myself in some way with family-owned businesses, family-owned farms, that sort of thing. It's really trying to track these things down for yourself, because nobody's helping you. These industries, they're not. And I don't look at it as a conspiracy, it just is the way it is. It's just massive consolidation. Don't get too stressed about it, it just is the way it is.
It's based on demand, it's
it's a
based on
system.
how we've bought for the past
Right.
10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
Thanks, Anja.
Yeah, I don't want to reiterate everything that Anja said, but for me, the perspective is my wife is a chef. She started the Slow Food Convivium here in West Michigan, and I own a design firm, so I'm not a foodie. I mean, I eat every day, but I'm not waking up, thinking about how I'm going to change the world. But I was struck when we started to have children. I came home on a Monday and I said, well, what'd you do today? Oh, drove around 3 or 4 farms. And I said, well, okay, well, that's interesting. And then Tuesday came home and she had driven around to 3 or 4 other farms. I'm like, well, what are you looking for? And she wanted real food for our kids. So kind of me seeing, well, there's obviously a need here. If you're not able to access that easily, I saw kind of a gap in the system that maybe I could fill, and had an idea of, I'm pretty busy on my own. I didn't have any grand visions of starting up any new company or anything, but I thought, well, I've got some resources that are available to me, and why not try to facilitate that connection between small-scale farmers and people like us, just normal, living in Easttown, and want to find real food from small farms. So what I did is put together a little team, found a programmer essentially, and started an online cooperative. And the way that the system works, or our system, is that there's the first full week of every month, you go to the site, you get reminders 2 or 3 a day to shop. But you go to the site, and for this week-long window, you purchase products. I think we have about 40 producers at any given time. There are probably 20 or 25 that are active each month. It's a monthly cycle. And then about a week and a half after the shopping window closes, you show up at our office, and we converted it essentially into an indoor farmer's market. And you pick up the food directly from the people that made it. And that's really what I was looking to do, is kind of shrink that gap between where does this come from. If people really want to know and are concerned about that, I wanted to try to make that an easier transaction. So, but we're entirely volunteer run, and it has evolved into this kind of a community thing. Now, we started out with 5 farms and 18 of my relatives and 4 other people in this block. And in this past month, the past 2 months, we've been like in the $25,000 transacted range. Over the past couple of months, we're like 260 to 280 shoppers coming in. So again, if people have heard of it, oh, that's cool, it's a neat way to get this stuff. It's quick and it's simple, both from the purchaser's end and I think from the producer's end as well. But, I've got 300 people shopping. So, in a metropolitan area of 1 million people, we're scratching the surface. So, I think the upside is, the potential's huge. It's word of mouth, everything's done on the cheap. But again, to kind of reiterate, you can't wait for somebody else to do it. I didn't have a driving interest in doing this. It was a good idea that caught on because there were enough like-minded people that are having the same thought, and I just kind of greased the skid.
Well,
So
and you didn't want Amy going like 11 farms
yeah,
a
and
week.
exactly. And I got to see my wife
Ways.
once in a while. So yeah, but yeah, it's about gumption. If you want to change it, you have to do it, or you have to get involved in something else. I worry a little bit. I'm glad that you're all here, but I'm always concerned about dilution to, the kind of food craze took off and everybody was into it for a while, and I felt over the past 6 months to a year that it's kind of, it's kind of on the downslide of being in the conversation. So this is really nice to see This spring, for some reason, things are popping up all over the
Whoa.
place. We're all over town. But that's a good thing, because these things need to be sustained, and there's more than enough room for a lot of people to do this, and we just need to keep pouring energy in it, especially those of us that have an interest.
Thanks, Jerry.
So I'm a culinary student here at GRCC, and we started this group called Tilling to Table about a year ago, and we started out basically just volunteering at farms and trying to learn as much about our local food scene as we could. And so now we've come and we've got like 3 community garden spaces going, and we've basically just like gotten a ton of community support from the college. I've worked with all these people before, so yeah, it's been pretty amazing. But I mean, we all just started out knowing nothing, and we've learned a ton. And you know, our group keeps growing bigger and bigger, and you know, we only see positive things going on from there. So we have a Facebook group, and we're always accepting new members. So if anyone's interested, we're always volunteering. So
Thanks, Devin. So the next question, or the first question, is what do you see being either the greatest needs, the greatest challenges, or the greatest successes that are happening around the local food movement in Greater Grand Rapids area?
Education is going to be huge. There are a couple of scenes in the movie that struck me. You have one is related to food, one is not, but you have that family that's going through the drive-through saying they don't have time and they don't have the money to buy the fresh food. But then, because they're not buying the good food, taking care of themselves, they're going to spend the money on the medication. And people, we have to educate them, the people, and make them understand that you have to invest to get a return. You're going to have to bite the bullet and buy that pound of broccoli, those 3 pears, and whatever else for $11, and that's it. You eat that and you're done. Yeah, you might be a little hungry, but and I don't want to have this sound negative, but there was only about one person in that family that looked like they could have possibly done without that fast food, and that broccoli, that pear, and $11 of the produce probably would have done them better. And that's part of education. The other thing is at Kevin's gravesite, where they release the balloons and the string, and getting off on a tangent. But again, here's somebody that's trying to be healthy and trying to do the right thing, and they're polluting into the environment. Even though it's biodegradable, I understand that about balloons, but if you take those same amount of balloons, you pop them, you take the string, and you throw a wad on the ground anywhere else, you'd be fined for littering. And yet because you let them go and they're out of sight, out of mind, then it's okay and it's a celebration of life. And it's this disconnect between everything we do, everything we consume, and not understanding the end result. So you've got to sacrifice, and you've got to learn about it, and how we get that education out is difficult, is beyond me overall, because obviously we're preaching the choir. You're giving up a 75, 80-degree evening to be here, so we don't need to be talking to you. You've taken the first step. You're starting to learn. You're going to pass it on. It's the other, 900,000 people that are in the metropolitan area that we're not reaching. And then finally, the other big hurdle is just strictly distribution. When I go to GFS and I ask for enough, and I don't want this to come across negative, so it's going to be a little bit blatant, so I apologize if it comes across wrong. You're doing $25,000 a month, which is phenomenal. I need $50,000 to $100,000 worth of food a month. So it's just not there. So when I go to GFS and I say, well, I want local this, I want local that, I want organic, they look at me like, well, whatever. Here's your list. Out of the 20,000 products we carry, here's the 1,000. And of the 1,000, maybe I can use 10 or 20 because of my menu and because of the quantities. It's just not there. But as long as you keep pushing me and I can keep pushing my purveyors, it will get there. And we just can't give up. You said, you're feeling that decline. That would be the worst thing in the world. for people to stop being educated, to stop having that drive, and to just go back to ordering whatever food, you know. Not only come to Sanchez because I do local and I take care of it, but buy the right things at Sanchez. Ask questions. You know, is the seafood sustainable and fresh and wild caught? Is it from the Pacific or is it farm raised? Is the goat cheese from Dancing Goat? Or because she's dry right now within these 3 months in resting your goats, are we having to get it back from another purveyor? If so, don't buy it during that time. Wait for it to come back in season. You know, it's said in the movie. So it's not just the establishment, but what you're buying within that establishment too. I think that's important, which gets back to education.
All very true. So we all are obviously going to be working on the same issues. My husband and I don't just grow food for our small community, but we also try to get very, very involved with the education aspect of it, mainly because that's really all we do. I mean, you can't give somebody from Michigan 47 kinds of vegetables, 90% which they've never seen before, and just say, go at it. They don't know how to cook. Nobody knows how to cook anymore. And so we decided last year that that was going to be a really big push on our part to offer cooking classes and to just really, really focus. I'm hoping to have our website just completely switched over to like cooking and nothing but cooking by next year. And so we try to, there's a new book out, which any of you who are, this book was a little young for me, as in it's written by a 27-year-old, and so there was a lot of blah, blah, blah. I broke up with so-and-so, and then I couldn't, you know, go out and eat, blah, 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 and he didn't like the food I cooked, blah, blah, blah. But in between here, it's really good. The Art of Eating In, the reason I'm bringing it, because it really is written toward the college-age person. She decides to take 2 years off and write a blog, and she's got a really, really awesome blog called The Art of Eating In, and she lives, by the way, in Manhattan, so it's kind of crazy to take 2 years off of no restaurants in New York. But this book is all about the fact that people don't know how to cook. So how can you? And the fact that, you know, going to Sanchez, my husband and I we don't love to go out because there aren't that many places to go out, just to be totally honest, in terms of I need to go and find a place that's locally owned, that the family is really involved in, that does their best to support local Michigan products as far as they can, environmental standards as far as they can. That's really, really difficult. But when we go out, it's to celebrate. It's not to feed my body, because I grow a lot of vegetables for that purpose. And she goes into that we need to learn how to, most people, takeout is what they eat. That's not a restaurant. That's not a dining experience. That's not a celebration of food and chefs and what they can do and what they learn at a place like GRCC. It's just eating in the car and just like putting fuel, worst kind of fuel, into your body. And we do need to get away from that, and I'm very encouraged by this next generation. And by that I mean most of our interns are between 21 and 25. They are very poor. They know they will be poor for the rest of their lives. I'm sorry, that's just the demographic standards there. They're not going to make as much money as their parents. They live in groups. They're very cooperative. They share cooking. They work in gardens. They bring home tons of stuff from our farm and share with their roommates. I mean, this is not how people acted when I was in college. That's just totally, totally different. They take knitting classes. They're learning how to can. They're quilting. I mean, there's like something really, really going on here. And I think the reality is that we're trying to adjust before we have to. Oil is going to become more expensive. Water is becoming a lot of people don't realize we get most of our food from California. California is in total drought conditions. They've been that way for 7 years. There is going to be a choice soon in California to either feed water to the cities or give it to the farmers. It's going to be over. Michigan right now, the state of Michigan, in the universities and in Lansing, is anticipating the time when we can go back to 1960, when Hudsonville was the salad bowl of America, and we can in turn ship vegetables back to California, who totally devastated our farm economy back in the 1960s and 70s. So it's kind of this whole, we really need to think ahead and start adjusting ourselves to a new reality. There's an incredible amount of job creation, I think, that's going to be going on. but it's gonna take a lot of entrepreneurship and a real push from sort of the ground up to figure out where America needs 10 million farmers in 10 years. Where the heck are these people gonna come from, right? And Michigan has a wonderful opportunity. We have most of our farmers retiring in the next 10 years. They're all 50 to 70 years old. And somebody can take over those farms. They don't have to run them like factories. They can grow healthy food that will be fed back into the communities and go to restaurants. You can make a living as a sustainable farmer. So you're not gonna make boatloads of money, but that's, I'm sure you don't make boatloads of money either with a restaurant. I mean, you do it because you love it, but there's gotta be more people out there that wanna do this. So I personally see nothing but incredible hard work, but hey, that's better than what we have now, which is a lot of very, very, very sick and unhealthy people, and very sick children, and animals, and just everything. You know, like you're just like, well, we can't really go anywhere but up if we all apply ourselves.
Yeah, I see the same thing, just working with our producers, you know, and I've seen this kind of influx of interest, and it's great. You know, we've got farmers now that, you know, in large part are supporting themselves through their sales at the co-op, which is kind of sad again, because our number isn't that big, but it just kind of shows that it's trending in that direction. I think there are big hurdles, though. There are bottlenecks that take place. I know locally, you know, you've got farmers with proper practices. Now, just to get animals slaughtered is a huge problem because there aren't slaughterhouses. I mean, there are missing links in the chain now that have been kind of obliterated by the big companies. So I see people being interested in going and getting back on the land, but I think there are other kind of forces that are kind of weighing against that success, and we need to really look at that part of it, because it really there are some sieves in place that things can't get through, that, you know, we need to open that back up. One of the successes that really feel, and I'm kind of repeating myself from last time, is this aspect of community. Even though, you know, at the co-op, our pickup lasts 2 hours, you know, and it's streamlined to funnel these people through here to get their product and get in and get out, you know, while allowing them to meet these people. It's like a party at our office. I mean, these people come in, you know, for this 1 2-hour window a month, and the energy is palpable. I mean, I've had 3 different groups up last month, one from Chelsea, and then 2 from Indiana, actually, because we give our software away as well. So, you know, you have to give to get, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Farmers are really helpful, especially with younger people. I think, you know, younger people need to volunteer, they need to do the internships, they need to kind of suck it up if they want to get into this and really get their hands dirty. But we're seeing that, and you know, I guess in any way that we're capable of assisting that, you know, that's something that we're trying to do with the co-op too.
Yeah, I think as a culinary student and restaurant worker for over 5 years, if anything's gonna get better, it's gonna have to be people going out to the right restaurants, getting the right food, and, you know, asking people, like making the workers be knowledgeable about their product. Otherwise, nobody's really gonna have any desire to get better. I mean, you look at larger metropolitan cities like Chicago and Toronto, and they have great places to go out to. And in Grand Rapids, I feel like there's a lower standard, so there's much less places to go to. So the only way that's going to get better is if people are concerned about it and actually want people to get better. So
Let's open it up to the floor. Questions that you have for our panel?
I have the mic, and I'm gonna, those of you who remember the Phil Donahue show, he used to
It's a big
run.
room.
So I'd like you to ask that question in the mic.
Okay. Jerry, you mentioned the shortage of abattoirs or the slaughterhouses. How many around in Michigan? I was trying to find some pork the other day, local pork. It's raised locally, but I was told it had to be shipped to Indiana to be processed and then sent back. Can you talk about?
I'm not really too familiar with the numbers themselves specifically, but, you know, it's just a concern that I've heard raised in several instances with our producers that, you know, that's where a lot of the trucking comes in now. You know, and I try to worry. In fact, I had our MDA rep in the other day. I just called her up and asked her to come in to help me out with some issues, you know, because I need to stay on top of things to assist our producers, but also just kind of make sure that we've got the right practices going on. And, you know, I find the MDA useful. They're always, you know, to my perspective, they've always been very helpful. It's that I think it's the litigation end that drives things right now, and it's kind of screwing everything up. You know, I think it has to be broken down and essentially rebuilt. You know, I think we broke the machine, and a lot of the parts don't even exist anymore. I have an old Carnegie, actually. I was driving around yesterday. I spent about 4 hours looking for one stupid little part, but nobody makes it anymore. So, you want to buy a Carnegie?
I was going to say, last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, the New York Times did a very, very big story on that problem in Vermont. Right now, Vermont dairy farmers are going out of business extremely fast, like 5 a week. And a lot of them have switched over to organics, but now there's been overproduction of organic milk because people are cutting back because of the recession. So now there's too much organic milk. So a lot of them are going under, or they're trying to take those same cows and go into meat processing, you know, raising them for beef, exactly, instead of dairy. And it's very, very common for a farmer to have to truck their animals 3 to 5 hours away. Now that happens right here in Michigan too. So for your farmer, they're probably in southern Michigan. That's the closest one. Most of them are up north. Those kind of facilities are usually very far from where the public goes. They're a little hard. They're off the beaten track. They're in very small towns. We have that same problem here in Michigan with illegal immigrants working there. That would be the job from hell, is working in a meat packing plant. And actually the one that I go to, it's really interesting. It's incredibly clean. It's in he has his house right there. His facility is right next to it. Drive in, I can see in the open area where they're cutting the heads off a deer and just processing them right there. You go in, I pick up the lamb that we bring. It is very, very small. But you're also very aware that that large piece of meat right there was the, you know, hind leg of a cow. And, you know, no, there's not blood and guts everywhere because it's so clean. But, you know, you could have 1,000 places like that, but it's like nobody's even trained how to be a butcher anymore. It's like all these lost skills, which is not to say that you can't bring them back, but the only thing that's going to revive them is people. For example, you know, vegetarianism is not the answer if you care about farmers who process animals, because somebody needs to, you know, it's like we're only going to get rid of GMO soybeans if we switch to organically grown soybeans, and we're only going to stop factory farms if we switch to, you know, my thing is, fine, eat 75% more vegetables and grains and beans, but if you buy that small amount of meat, pay twice as much and find it from a really good farmer, and the nutrition coming out of that meat is going to be 100 times more than, you know, you're basically just eating corn right now when you're talking about meat in America anyway. And yeah, wasn't it one of those guys? I think he's like, basically Americans are just walking corn chips. That's all we are. 90% of our diet is corn, and we wonder why we have such obesity and diabetes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, meat's a big problem.
And the butcher, I mean, you know, I lived back in Grand Rapids for 20 years and essentially in the same house for 18, and you know, I go to D&W and buy things. There used to be a butcher at D&W.
Yeah.
I mean, in the course of me going there and shopping, and they don't have butchers anymore. That all comes in packaged, and they open up packages and put them on display, but nobody's really cutting anything there. So, I mean, we all have evidence of that. Well, if they're not there, they're not in too many places now, and it's I don't know if it was in that article, but they say it's like an hourglass, and that's the pinch point. You know, now, okay, we've got all these, you know, properly raised animals, but no way to process them efficiently, so.
Another question?
I'm concerned, I have a question about the Trillium Farms. Did you have to go through any regulation hoops to get certified that your produce was organic? Like, do you have to deal a lot with
Are you certified?
regulations or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's a good question.
That's an
It's a big
excellent,
issue,
it's a
yeah.
huge issue,
It's
it's
a
a
huge
very
issue.
excellent issue. What my husband and I tried to do, which is just be complete realists, right? And so, the whole thing about organics, I am not a gigantic, huge proponent. Of course, everything we eat is organic and my whole house is organic, but that's just because I have 2 small children. But organic certification, I believe, is because you don't know your farmer. You don't know where your food comes from. You have no idea how that was raised. You have no idea if it even comes from this planet, but it has a little stamp on it, all right? So you're like,
That stamp,
well,
yeah.
the very minimum, it didn't have pesticides and ammonia and, you know, herbicides and all that kind of thing. So for us, we have gone through the certification process because we have a very large greenhouse. We do 60,000 plants that we distribute, that are distributed with a distribution company. We do certified organic, you know, herbs and vegetable plants, and we're at the market, you know, the whole month of September or May with that. The reason we decided that is because they are shipped out of state. Nobody knows. You have to know that. With our CSA, our whole thing is just like Joel Salatin. Joel Salatin doesn't want anything to do with the federal government. So his whole thing is, you know, if you base your entire business on your own integrity, it's up to you being who you say you are, and your farm is open to the public, and people can walk around and you can see by our weeds that we are not using a lot of chemical. Like, we don't have perfectly straight rows and they're perfectly clean. But any of our members, and we have about 1,200 people that are part of our farm, can walk in our barn. It's just very easy to see that there aren't big giant barrels with like a, you know, skull and crossbones on it. Right, exactly. And we don't have the big sprayers. But that's something that when everything gets too big, whether it's the federal government, whether it's a school district, whether it's your local government, whether it's your farms, whether it's anything, you lose the integrity because there's just no way that you have any idea. And the cool thing about something small is in Grand Rapids is small enough that we all know where to eat, right? I mean, we all know.
That's true.
If you really want to know, you can find out where to eat, right? You know who to support. But you know, I know these 40 farmers. I can vouch for all of them. I visited every single one of their farms. You keep things small enough. Grand Rapids is small enough that we can have a local system where anybody who is not doing a good job, it's a capitalist system. You're free to sell your product. Your neighbors and, you know, customers are free to not shop with you and, you know, not buy your products. That in an ideal system, that's what we would have. But we know that in a monopolized system, you don't even have that opportunity, the chance to, you know, create a business and stand out there. So certified organic, again, just really important if you don't know that person personally. Yep.
Yeah, I think we only have one certified organic producer at the co-op.
It's very expensive.
Yeah, and it's a convoluted system.
It's
And-
so
and-
much
and yeah, and I
paperwork.
think-
You are destroying just forests of trees.
Right.
Yeah, it's so bad.
But that is, and that's something that the co-op too, we don't discriminate as to practices. Again, we leave it to the market to decide. We make sure that the producers put on there what they're doing, and then we do farm inspections to make sure that they are doing what they say they're doing. But we leave it to the membership to decide who they want to buy it from. I mean, if you want, you know, not that we're selling it, but radioactive corn, buy it.
Organic.
Yeah, organic radioactive
corn.
corn. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the organic corn syrup. I
Right.
love that one.
Right.
So.
Other questions?
Oh, behind you.
I am a public assistant recipient, and it has been frustrating for me to want to support local farmers, to want to support organic, and to not have the option to be able to use my bridge card. When there were food stamps, that might have been a little more easy, but now that we're all plastic, it takes all of you to have swipers in order to process my order. How do we combat that? Because I'm all about it, and I got about 50 people who are behind me that's all about it. We don't know where to go, and we don't know who to throw our support in with. Can you help us out?
Oh, well, that's
Yeah,
a policy, well,
that's
that's,
another tricky one. But Fulton Street does take bridge cards. Yeah, they started, I think, last year, but they got like a $5,000 grant to do it. I want to steal their stuff,
Yeah.
so we could do it. And that's something, we don't even take credit cards right now. Again, it's all been volunteer driven. We don't really have that much money, so, you know, even to, and we try to keep the markup low on both sides as well. So we try to keep our membership fee down, our annual fee. So it's constantly weighed against that, how much work we're willing to take on, you know, to do those improvements. But that's very high on our list. As soon as we get credit cards, which I hope to do this year, bridge cards, I think you can kind of piggyback on top of that. But yeah, that's a great point.
Well, and
it's
that's
something that comes up frequently.
That's a federal policy, and, you know,
Yeah.
there's gotta be changes at the federal and state policy. That's a huge one. I mean, there are so many people in the United States working on the issue of why do our most vulnerable,
Right.
children, people in prisons, people in hospitals, and the poorest of the poor, get the absolute worst food, because it's high calories and zero nutrition, which just makes people more vulnerable. So these are issues, they were big in the 70s kind of, but now I think there's more research, there's more data, there's more statistics, and there are people that are working on it. So if it's something you want to get involved in, please educate yourself about those issues, because people, right now, we kind of live in a time frame where if people are unemployed or overweight or have health problems, the burden is on them. It's their fault, right? We're all individuals, alone in the world, taking care of ourselves. And we really need to start looking at these as really systematic problems and take the morality out of it. We are not here to judge people's choices. Of course, everybody has a choice. But to really look at where the system breaks down is where you're getting all of these health problems. I mean, I have been 100% organic since like 1989, and I have a child with asthma, and I have a child with gluten intolerant, can't do dairy. You know, why is that? Why is that? Obviously, it's now so built into the generation after generation, and we have a very toxic sort of environment that we all live in. So you can't just say, you know, well, that's my fault. I need to look at the big picture and say, there are many children with many issues, and what is it in our system that's creating that? And, you know, you all try to do a small part of it, but I think taking it out of a blame game and just looking at it as we have a system that's set up, a civilization that's set up, you know, it's just the way things have been moving for 75 years, 75 to 100 years, and we need to change it. That's what you do with systems. I mean, if we hadn't, we'd all be serfs living in the Middle Ages. There would be no democracy. So, you know, it's like incredibly incremental, and it's good to have a wider view and a longer view. We can't change it tomorrow, but it's changing, so.
Other questions?
Yeah, nobody asked me about marketing, so I'll pass out some of my free marketing buttons. So.
Well, we really
Good things on
encourage
it.
you to come to the movie Fresh if you haven't seen that one at Aquinas next week. Wednesday, yes. I, of course, will be there, and so will Jerry, because we do everything. We just go to every one of them. But you know what? I have to say this was the coolest thing that I got invited to. April, of course, is a big month because it's Earth Day and all of that, and it's right before spring, and people think green and sustainable and all that kind of stuff. But I got invited to East Grand Rapids Middle for Career Day to be a farmer.
That's cool.
Wonderful.
I mean, I was like,
In East Grand Rapids.
what?
Yeah.
That is so amazing. And the reason that happened is because moms who are part of our farm, who own their own businesses, they and their husbands own their own businesses. I don't care why you get involved in this, whether it's just for personal health or to save the world or whatever, but they looked at the way we were running this farm and they were like, this is a really good business model, and we need younger people at the middle school, high school, college age to know that there is a successful business model out there. I mean, it's very, very important that small farms are successful financially, not just, with the quality of their products. So I just thought that was huge. This is not 10 years ago, no way. There's farmers who would want to be a farmer. So I thought that was kind of to end on a really cool note for our farm. I'm really happy about that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the panel. And
I'm really good friends with Casey.
I think, if you would like to talk with any members of the panel, I'm sure we're gonna be around for a few minutes. But thank you all for coming. Please remember that next week we also have our own event on Tuesday, the 6th. Mary Ann is going to facilitate Story of Stuff and Wally. So, thank you.